I don't know whether to take this chair or that chair. What we're doing, you know, I've been struggling with this question for a while. You know, that used to be technology was the thing that was bringing us all together, that was giving us voice, that was connecting us to folks we didn't know. Now, there's, you know, we're storytellers at the Atlantic. Now the question is technology the villain? And as we get into that, I just want to, you know, recognize what a dire set of questions is. Gene Block, the chancellor here at UCLA, yes, this Gene right here, wave again so everybody knows who you are, Gene. So, historic day yesterday, Gene Block joins Twitter. So he is now on Twitter. I became the 1140th follower. He's done 4 tweets. The 4th tweet was on this. So just as we start in terms of this dangerous terrain of social media that you both know so much about, from privacy or whatever, is it a greater danger that Gene's Twitter feed is really bland, or can he get into real trouble? Alex?
Hopefully there's not. I would say tweet up to your highest self. There's an old expression, dance like nobody's watching, tweet like you're going to read it aloud in a deposition. The ability to tweet out something that may eventually be looked at out of context is always there, and so it's a medium where you want to say things that are positive and authentic, and also understand the variety of people who might see it without knowing who you are or what you had in mind when you said it.
Now, the other thing is, you know, this is a big research university, and you know, and it's got very high ratings. Cindy, I know you're one of my icons in the kind of battle over privacy. So for those of you who don't know, Electronic Frontier Foundation has really been one of the litigants involved with privacy on the net and also dealing with the National Security Agency. So what do you want to tell the chancellor about what he has to worry about from the NSA that he doesn't already know?
Well, I don't know what he already knows. I would say that if you're on Twitter, then, you know, everybody's listening. But I suspect you already knew that. I think that, you know, I would definitely, I mean, back to your original question, like, I would be really careful about trying to be funny. I think there are people who are professionals who can pull it off on Twitter, but it's really hard.
Andy Richter, he'll be here later.
Yeah, no, there's plenty of people who can do that, but if it's not your profession, maybe not. I think that, you know, I mean, one of the reasons that we worry about the way the internet is kind of evolved is because of the surveillance business model that a lot of these companies, most of the major companies have embraced. This idea that they're going to follow you all around, they're going to watch everything you do, and they're going to target ads or whatever information at you based upon some decisions that they are making about what will keep you on the platform as long as possible. That, I think we're in a current moment where people are starting to recognize that and interrogate that. This has been something we've worried about for a long time, because those gigantic storehouses of data and all those things that flow over the network are being accessed by the National Security Agency through some once secret but now somewhat known government programs, tapping into the internet backbone and watching traffic as it goes by, or going to the Googles and the Facebooks with requests that require them to search all of the stuff that they know about you to try to find the thing that they're looking for. So this creates a real shift in our relationships with our government, where it used to be, you know, your default was that you had a private life, and the government had to make a pretty high showing if it wanted to figure out what you were up to, both in the national security context and in domestic law enforcement. The fact that all this information is now in the hands of third parties is actually a profound constitutional shift. There's something called the third party doctrine that basically says when you give information to a third party, you relinquish your constitutional privacy interests in that information. That information now belongs to them, and they don't have to, you know, abide with a lot of process in order to give it to the government, because it's really kind of not really under your control anymore and not legally protected for you. And we're trying to get that doctrine knocked down. There's a case called Carpenter that the Supreme Court's going to decide between now and the end of June that may have some influence on that. But part of why we care about privacy is this problem that these companies are feeders to government surveillance, and not just our government, of course, governments around the world.
So I guess my question, I'll jump to you, Alex, is should we still love the internet, or should we fear the internet?
I mean, I still think a lot of the promises of the internet that changed my life when I was a 90s kid are still very much there. I think we're trying to figure out how to protect those now, especially, and maybe protect them
what was
from
cool
ourselves.
For you then that's still cool now?
So to me, like the diversity of information and the worldviews that you get is still unparalleled. I mean, to me, like ability to read like interesting writing and to read things by people who are different than myself and to interact with them. It sounds sort of trivial now, but that was life-changing for me, you know, when I was in high school and in college. We Medium, or like part of what we're trying to think intelligently about some of these problems like tracking and around data. And I think what we are trying to do that gets us more in that type of environment is to say like, how do we give people things that will make them smarter and better, and work backwards from that, and not collect things and not serve them ads, and just say like, how are we going to connect people with other people, and how are we going to find the smartest things in your head, get them out of your head, and get them into other people's heads. And like, and there's a lot of hard stuff along the way and a lot of human problems that are just related to just like sometimes the natural jaggedness and friction of humans interacting with humans with technology as an accelerant. But that to me is not fundamentally a technology problem. We are trying to like build a place where people feel like, okay, I'm going to be my best self and say the smart things that I wish other people understood.
So, but how does that work? I mean, unpack that for me a little bit. I mean, in a medium like Medium, where you've got folks engaged in discourse, they can write what they want, they can exchange what they want. Last night you shared with me that you were the sheriff of Medium. I don't know if any of you like your local sheriff or support your local sheriff, famous movie, but this is the sheriff. So when you're in that role of playing the enforcer, if you will, of civility, and I'm sort of interested in how this world and this conversation that's going on relates to the big issues of, are we all going to hang together? Are we going to, despite our differences, stay on the same boat, or is the boat going to sink? I mean, that's essentially what's going on. So what does your experience at Medium show you? Yeah,
so apart from being the sheriff, I think we are also like the gardeners of Medium. We are trying to like foster the positive things so that before you get to the two questions of enforcement. And so just for example, a lot of what I spend time thinking about is like, what product things can we do that will cause interactions to be positive? And so everything from like the somewhat like consequential font of Medium that is large and makes you feel like, well, I'm going to write something that people are going to read. I'm not like leaving a stray drive-by comment that makes fun of somebody's like jacket. I'm going to write something, and the way that we cause interactions to be a little bit slower and potentially less rewarding to impulsivity. And to encourage people to say, like, I'm publishing a thing. I'm not going to engage in a high velocity, heated exchange that's going to escalate. There's a lot of product things that we do to try to garden the platform in a positive way, to say, like, how do you make human interactions more highly probable to wind up constructive? And we may have different views on, like, and as long as you're making it clear to folks, like, this is what we're doing. Like, this is a highly constructed space where we're going to try to create certain kinds of interactions. I think those are generally positive.
If Roseanne Barr were posting on Medium rather than on Twitter, would you try to reel her in?
So it's a little hard to say. I haven't read everything, and I think Medium is
just. I could take 140 spaces and turn it into an article, but just pretend it's offensive to many, fairly. I mean, she admits the race, but I guess what I'm sort of interested in when we're kind of looking at this area of expression and rights, and I'm going to tee up Cindy, because you're a defender of those rights to express. So if she's on Medium and she's engaged in what a lot of people are pretty upset about now, how do you reel that in? Or do you reel it in? Or should you reel it in?
So I think the various platforms, like we all have a different flavor and a different tone, and we're different kinds of speech communities where people come to interact with each other. And so I think the first thing that you sort of do is like make clear to your users and foster an environment that's like, this is the vibe here, and you have clear rules that are like, here's the types of things we want, here's the types of things we don't want. Just like you might go to a bar, and one bar you can say a lot more and be a loudmouth, and another bar people might be like, hey, that's not cool. And then you might say a ton of stuff, and eventually they'll be like, all right, you said a lot of hateful things to this person who works here or to another patron, and so it's time for you to go. Like, I think it's not unlike that. And when you have a private space, when you make the rules clear to people of like, this is the environment we're trying to foster, and if you're honest about how you try to enforce them, you're sort of listening to the people on your platform, and they often govern themselves a lot and will reach out and say like, before we have to do anything, they will start to say like, hey, that's not how we want to interact here. Like, we're trying to be constructive. Like, why are you doing that? And not reward it with attention and not reward it with amplification.
Cindy, how do you feel about the gardeners of conversation?
Well, I think as long as there's a lot of gardens, then that's okay. And the thing that the world we're in now is we've got whole countries where Facebook is the internet, right? So we got one gardener, right? His name is Mark. And that is problematic on a whole bunch of levels, but specifically on this level, because we're hearing a lot of pressure on Mark to do a better job of making sure that that the platform is doing X or Y or Z. And Mark sucks at that, and he's going to keep sucking at it because nobody will do that right. And so, our philosophy, and it's not my philosophy. I think the philosophy of freedom of expression, the First Amendment in the U.S. Constitution or in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, this isn't an American concept, is that it's really too dangerous to try to lift somebody up to be the decider about what other people get to say on large scale. In your own little bar, of course, and I think that's fine, but the goal is to have a lot of different places so that you get to choose which one you want to go into. Do you want to go into the loud sports bar? Do you want to go into the quiet bar? Do you want to go into other places? Those options are, or you want to build your own? Oh my God, you could actually do that. You don't have to go to Mark's bar. And put pressure on these I think the answer isn't to try to have a few people who we put on pedestals and then complain about because they're not being God as well as we'd like them to be, is to kind of get rid of this idea that there needs to be a God and bring more competition into this space, more interoperability into this space. Facebook isn't, lots of people aren't on Facebook because they decided that they really liked how Zuckerberg curates things. They're there because they're kind of held hostage, right? I mean, you want to find out what your cousin's baby pictures look like, so I think that the focus on thinking about how to make technologies serve us better ought to be on the serve us better part, which is, how do we create a multiplicity? How do we get rid of this world where we've got 4 big companies? You've got 2 ways to get on the internet, maybe 3. LA, you probably have 3. Most places in the country have 1. And then 4 places to go once you get there. That's not the internet. That's a subset.
So quick question, Cindy. Would you like to see a world, is Facebook a net positive, or do you wish it had never been created?
I struggle with the binary nature of this internet good, internet bad.
Well, let me put it a different way.
You can ask that same question about freeways.
But there's a different way to look at it.
They help the bank robbers, so maybe not. I don't think the technology cares.
But there is a way to frame it. I recently was in Europe and interviewed the minister for the digital economy in Europe, and the one responsible for, I think, instituting the GDPR guidelines and privacy guidelines, which I think you support. I'm not sure. We'll have to find out. But the question is, a Facebook, a Google, some of these large platform monopolies, we can call them, and others, would, I don't think, ever be created in a Europe with those kinds of guidelines. So you see them emerge in this country with lesser regulation, and the regulation has come from other communities, and then you get this hybrid where Facebook exists or Google exists, but it wasn't invented in Europe. It was regulated in Europe, and that may come in. So I'm interested in that synergy and whether you believe it or not, because when I asked that question of whether Europe will never have created a Facebook, I think. Not in the way that they have guidelines. So it's not a facetious question, it's a real question in the sense, do you, and I know we can't go back, but the question is, how do you get it right? How do you create an environment that is innovative, that continues to bring people together, and they're going to grow across the lines? I mean, so that's the balance I'm trying to get in terms of trying to understand what the balance is between whether technology is wrecking us or saving us.
Well, I think technology is always, and this will be the answer every single time, doing a little of both. And I think that this is why I resist the binary. Technology doesn't care. Technology can do great things, it can do horrible things. All technology is the same way. Your car, it gets you from here to there. It's awesome. It could also kill people. The technology itself isn't there. It's how we use it and what decisions we make about how to use it. And so I think Facebook has gotten too big. That doesn't necessarily tell you what you want to do about it, because it's actually pretty complicated. I think that the European regulatory approach to this is going to make it difficult to do some of the things I think we might need to do to get out of this, like push more interoperability. because Facebook's answer to the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which is, oh my God, these people got this data from us and used it to do bad things, is, well, we better make sure nobody else gets any data from us. Which means, those handcuffs you have, the fact that you're held hostage by Facebook, that gets worse. That's why, I don't know why Zuckerberg said that, but I would guess that maybe that's in Facebook's interest for us all to think that that there's that the answer to the problems with Facebook is to make Facebook more powerful. And I worry that, I think the GDPR has some great stuff in it. There's some stuff in it I don't like the right to be forgotten and other things. I think it's an interesting experiment. We're going to see how it plays out. But I worry that if we don't think hard about how to do this, Facebook will be the last social network that we ever have. That's worse.
I want to go to all of you in a moment, but first, Alex, Senator Mark Warner is in town today, and I previewed some of his remarks that he sent over, and he's going to challenge the tech industry and say, you've been derelict in your responsibilities to the social contract in America, that you have ridden this wave of growth and whatnot, but the cost is civility in the country, privacy in the country, the rights of Americans, the institutional decay in American democracy. You know this field really well. What would your response be to Mark Warner?
I think part of the very hard challenge that he and his colleagues have is to try to, if they want to make additional laws or regulations in this area, to do things that are going to balance the interests of the awful lot of people who are online, some of whom want to be able to say whatever they want, some of whom want to be free from intimidation, and to not ask private companies to say, okay, well, you figure it out, whether you do it with magical AI robots or whether you do it with staffs of 7,000 or 10,000 folks who are clicking through things. Do you want to deputize private companies? Because if one creates more risk for companies and says, take down the stuff that is mean within an hour, we're going to take a definition of mean that is very capacious because we want to obey the law. So you don't trust algorithms? I think the solutions to this thing are going to have to be sort of a human-robot collaboration, like the
singularity.
Yeah, we're getting there as fast as we can. So I think that the exoskeleton that machine learning provides to some of the folks that I work with to sift through a lot of information and make intelligent decisions is extremely helpful. Like for us, we don't have machines making the decisions. We have them as an adjunct and as a way to inform humans to make the decisions more wisely. And so once we get into the question of having the machines be the frontline decision makers and then having that appeal to humans, then you start to raise harder questions around expression. But that's not the way that we've been going.
Terrific. We got a question right here.
Yeah, my name is Tom. How do we, using your analogy, how do we encourage people to go to bars where they may not be comfortable, where they may get ideas that they're not comfortable with?
Could you say it one more time?
Yeah. I mean, if we're all going to our own bars where we just reinforce our own biases.
Right.
How do you get people to go to
the bar where everybody thinks the same, does the same? And let me take John Taplin, who's one of the great experts on this as well. And John, you heard me say platform monopolies. I didn't know you were there. He's the expert on platform monopolies.
I just want to suggest that Ms. Cohn's suggestion that she's worried about surveillance capitalism monopolies is one of the most hypocritical things I've ever heard in my life. Because EFF constantly, funded by Google, fronts for Google on all the issues that they don't want to have their name on, like SESTA. They want to stop online sex trafficking bill, kill it.
Thanks, John. No. So, bars where everybody thinks the same and surveillance monopoly platforms. But on the question of, I think it is interesting because the internet was going to kind of give us all, but it's allowed us to cocoon ourselves with all the things that we like that support us. Is there a way to break through that is there? And to the degree, if you want to respond to John's area, I think the broader question is, how do you get the balance right, I suppose, in terms of governance and the power of some of these institutions?
So let me start with the attack, and then we'll get to the other thing. EFF's finances are public. You can look. I got a $14 million budget last year, and I got $85,000 from Google. So if you think I'm bought that cheap, it was about patents, by the way, to talk about a case called Alice that helped free up patents. So I just don't think the numbers bore out this argument. We're not bought. You can look at what we do. you know, Google didn't support FOSTA SESTA, we did. I mean, they didn't oppose it, they agreed to it. We didn't. We believe in CD8230 more than them. We've been fighting surveillance. We've been doing a lot of this stuff since before Google existed. We're not, I mean, but whatever, our work speaks for itself. There's a lot of haters out there right now, and there's a lot of people, most of them funded by Oracle, who are trying to throw shade at Google and trying to use the nonprofit sector to do so. So it's useful to look at who's funding the feces as well as the stuff that's being thrown. In terms of the, I'm sorry, now I lost track of the other
cocoon.
I think that it's funny because I don't think we've chosen this cocoon. I think the algorithms have, right? This is why I want people to get empowered to be able to have more choice over this, because you're not deciding what comes up in your Facebook feed. Facebook is, and it's based on some assumptions about you, most of which are based on algorithmic decision making that isn't you at all. And so I think that part of the thing here is that I don't think people have chosen only to hear from people that they agree with. I don't think people want to only hear from people they agree with. I don't know, because we don't know, because we don't live in that alternate universe where that's what you get. For your social media feeds, for all of these kinds of things, for even your Google search results, right? They are making decisions about you and trying to present things to you that will keep you engaged on the platform. And that's not the same thing as what you want to see.
I mean, it raises, I'm going to have you finish up, it raises a really interesting question as you do your NSA work, and you just said earlier that they're able to see and penetrate and see everything you're doing. The Cambridge Analytica approach is I don't need to do that. I can see if you're buying peanut butter and watching Roseanne at night and going, you know, skiing somewhere. I know a lot about your behavioral characteristics and know what you're going to do. It's observation at two different ends of the pole.
Yeah,
both of which
I mean, the
concern
Cambridge Analytica approach it'll be interesting. I mean, a lot of what we need to do is really push for transparency around these algorithms and push for some understanding about how they're working. I think there's the jury is still out on whether this Cambridge Analytica approach actually even works, but they certainly sold it to a lot of people. We'll see, but I do think that this is the holy grail, right? Is that we don't actually have to talk to you or look at you. We can watch you passively and then know everything about you and therefore manipulate you into either buying the things we want you to do or do those other things. And I think we should be skeptical of that strategy to begin with, but also then we have to understand it if we're going to figure out how to combat it.
So Alex, last point on bars with everybody who's the same.
So,
sounds awful.
So on this question here, our goal is to try to give people stuff to read that is the thing that they didn't know they wanted that is going to make them smarter. That's the goal. We have no ads. We don't give any data to ads. We don't care about your peanut butter. We want to know, what do you want to read? Especially, what do you want to read that you didn't know you want to read? That's the goal. And along the way, we want to give you control over how we do that. And so, and for us, because we take money for Medium and we have no ads, it frees us up to ask questions that collect data that we want to be benign and is not used in these other commercial ways. As a result, we want to create one of the many environments where you come to read stuff. Now, you might be feeling adventurous one day and want to get challenged and want to hear somebody, challenge you. You might have other days where you're not feeling that way and you want to go to a different platform and you want a little bit more chill, long thing about why you should buy cryptocurrency. We want to be one of those places, but part of what our use of algorithms tries to do is to intuit the things about you that are going to give you the things that you really, really want. We work backwards from there and do it as well as we can. But that is really the process.
And we will end it there. Thank you, Cindy Cohn with the Electronic Frontier Foundation and Alex Fierce of Medium. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.